Ordinance passes. On to the resolution section. I don't think Lynn was here. On to the resolution section, establishing these are resolutions 11-90, authorizing the mayor of the city of DeKalb, Illinois, to sign an agreement with PSA Dewberry for the architectural design of a new police station on West Lincoln Highway in the amount of $807,000. I would like to, we've had a lot of discussion on this, and we can have further discussion tonight, but I don't think we're ready to pass this evening. There's been many questions and many concerns about amounts, about going out for bid, and I would like to see this tabled so that it allows further discussion, or postponed indefinitely. Thank you, Steve. Postponed indefinitely, so that those that have questions can continue to get those answered. Those that would like to give direction to the city manager at a future date or even tonight about going out for further bid. But I think it's apparent that we're not at a point where we can establish this contract and sign this out tonight. So, would I hear a motion?
I would so move.
For discussion. That's been moved by Mr. Naylor. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Discussion then on this, please. Yes. And then we have someone from the audience that does want something to speak.
The discussion is regarding the postponement.
Right.
Yeah, I only heard you or anyone mention tabling before this point, and tabling meant that it would go away forever. And a postponement was not discussed, and I'm ready to make a decision tonight. My sleeves will be rolled up. I hope we have 4 people that at least keep the ball rolling, because I do not want to succumb to the threats that we're going to put it off a whole year if we table it or even postpone it, that are happening behind the scenes after the meeting and during the week. So as far as a postponement, I'm not ready to postpone. I hope that we can go into, we can talk about a postponement later, but that's my point of order that I'm getting to. If we vote the postponement down now, can we go into full discussion of and then come back to an idea of a postponement?
Just
necessary.
To clarify the difference between tabling and postponing, and this will be a nice preview for you for the next week's meeting. We're going to bring in kind of an update and a discussion at the COW about Robert's rules and about some of these different motions to give some greater clarity. If there's a motion to table an item, typically the motion would be to table it until a later point in the meeting. So you would say, I'd like to table this discussion about what color the car is going to be until after we decide if we're going to buy the car. A motion to postpone indefinitely is really a motion to terminate discussion on that item, to kill that item until some future point in time when it may or may not be brought back. So a motion to postpone indefinitely is a motion to vote down the item from having any further progress on the agenda. If it comes back at a future point in time, it would have to be something new that comes back.
So I guess to clarify, if we can say no on the postponement for now and vote to table it so that we can discuss it and then come back in the same discussion and make a decision on whether or not we're going to pass it or not based on the amendments that might come up, or do we even need to table it if we want to bring in amendments and discussion right now?
Again, typically if you move to table something, it's moving to table it until a later point in the meeting. A move to postpone indefinitely is a move to kill that item, a move to stop that item from moving forward. And typically if something would come back after a motion to postpone indefinitely, it would have to come back in some sort of new format or as a motion to reconsider. That would be pretty irregular. So if what you're trying to do is have further discussion on this at a later point in time, you could just opt to not take action on this item this evening, and that would leave it open to reconsider this specific item as it's presented at a later date.
Okay, well, I'm prepared to talk. I've spent dozens of hours meeting with contractors, architects, and I'd like to go over some ideas. And so I would hope that we don't postpone it at this point. If you guys decide to postpone it after we talk about a few critical things, then so be it. But so I guess that's my discussion, is that I would hope that we don't postpone it at this very moment, so we can at least talk about this.
In order to do that, you would have to defeat the motion to postpone.
Correct.
Move to pass, discuss and then move to postpone. And
Understand.
another option besides indefinitely would be to a time certain.
If we table it,
To a date certain.
table it to a date certain or
No,
postpone it?
postpone to a date certain.
I mean, I was ready to pass this police station at every juncture for the last 10 years. There's no reason that we should be postponing it tonight, I don't think. But we might be able to come to a discussion and see what comes of this. I've been saving this discussion for everyone that's here instead of sitting on the phone and going right on down the line and finding out what everybody's thinking. I didn't appreciate getting calls. What are you thinking? Because I want to talk about it tonight. That's what we're here for.
Other discussion? We have some speakers that are here. Can they come to address this issue then?
Yeah, that would be within the power of the chair if you want to recognize
Yeah.
other speakers before the motion is voted on.
Okay, yes, please. Nina. I'm sensitive to this because she sat through that whole public hearing last week and we didn't get to it, and so I want to make sure she has
I appreciate that.
Thank
I
you.
do. And I appreciate the meeting that you had this morning.
Thank you.
With me and several other members of the student body of NIU who represent those who are very opposed to having the location of the police department directly across from the Center for Black Studies where we hold classes and several different other functions that are pivotal to the growth of the students who congregate there. Their voices have not been heard in this. I understand that the members are ready to move and, get the architectural firm ready and set to go, but there is not an insignificant number of students and faculty who are very displeased and finding out that they were not given the consideration necessary before this decision was made. I know that this has been in the pipeline for a long time, but there has been previous communication had, and we spoke, but there was not an adequate or appropriate response given. So I think it would be rather difficult to have a police station directly across from a rather large body of students who are opposed to it. Business members who have voiced just to me today their opposition to this, and the fact that they have not been a part of any meetings in any of this discussion. It's very important that the DeKalb Police Department have the full support of all who are in the area. And if this is going to be a smooth transition, then it can't be a closed session of, well, let's meet and then we'll decide how we're going to move forward. There has to be extensive conversations with all of those who are going to be majorly affected. And I am one of those students who will be majorly affected by this. And the students who are voicing their opinions now, the business members who are voicing their opinions to me just today, the faculty at NIU who I've spoken with today, are not going to go away. So even if you move on this, you want to move on this and have as much support from those who are going to be in the immediate vicinity as possible. Otherwise, we're setting ourselves up to have a conflict that does not need to be. So there are no threats being made. I'm just letting you know what not an insignificant number of people that I've been speaking with and those who are drawing up petitions as we speak will be saying to you shortly after I get off the stand. Your phones will be ringing, your mailboxes will be flooded, there will be meetings had until everyone feels like their voice has been actually heard, because right now, that's not the case. Because if the voices were heard, then you would have heard this from many more people before tonight. They would have expressed this. So I understand that the location has already been chosen, but nothing is done until it's done, and nothing is over until it's over. And voices will be heard until ground is broken, and voices will be heard trying to prevent ground from being broken. There's going to be an interruption and disturbance in classes. There's already a relationship between the DeKalb Police Department and many who congregate in the Center for Black Studies that is not good, and it is only gotten better marginally at best. And having a police station right across the street from the Center for Black Studies is not going to do anything to help that relationship. And if you try to fix that relationship after that location has already been secured, after the police station is already there, you're trying to fix a fire after you've already just poured gasoline over it. It's going to make the job much more difficult. We want to increase the relationship or improve the relationship that we have with the DeKalb Police Department, but I don't see that happening. I also see a clash between the NIU police and the DeKalb police. It's not like there haven't been clashes before. Yes, the relationship has gotten better, but this is not going to help to improve that relationship. And it will more than likely cause that relationship to lose the ground that it has gained. So I implore you to just pump the brakes for a moment and at least have some meetings, have some conversations, listen to some people, and don't just cut them off and say, well, that has already been decided upon, so we're not going to go back there now. Because if they hear you say that, then they're going to push forward harder. And one thing you don't want is two people pulling on each end of the rope because then nothing gets accomplished. So I implore you to just take a moment and listen to the students of NIU. They don't want this.
Thank you. Is Farouk here? I don't see him. He's not going to be here, and Mark is not here also. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's do a roll call, please.
Alderman Gallagher.
No.
Naylor.
Yes.
Baker. This is to postpone indefinitely.
No.
O'Leary.
No.
Jacobson.
No.
Tarazinski.
Yes.
Lash.
No.
2 aye, 5 nay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve this resolution this evening?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Baker,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Lash. Okay, let's roll up our sleeves and go at it. Go ahead, Dave.
I passed out a couple of sheets that gave some ideas. I think that one of the things I'm concerned about is that there was a lot of confusion in this process. Maybe it's because I made an assumption that I didn't step forward and press the issue. I am a general contractor. I've built over 56 projects during the 20 years that I built. I haven't built anything for about 4 years now, but the process is usually pretty simple. You secure the land, which we've done. After you do your site analysis, which went on for years to figure out where the best location for that police station is, and I, as the alderman for the students, pushed for it to be as close to the university as possible because of all the problems and the emergency calls in the Greek Row area. It saves over 3 minutes on every emergency call, and if you do a ride-along with the police on busy nights, you'll understand how important it is to get closer to where the action is. That has been established. I'm sure there'll be a lot more input and a lot more debate on that. The next thing you do is that you secure your financing. We've gone through that process. In the private sector, what we would do then is find an architect. Mr. Naylor and I spoke a little bit today. We didn't finish the conversation, but it is very simple to find an architect in the private sector. It's very complicated, and Ron's correct, in the public sector. There's much more that you have to go through, especially for a building like this. You need to find an architect that has built police stations before, or has people on their staff that have. There are many nuances to a police station. P.S. Dewberry went through selection processes in the past, but not under this current council. They may be the best choice out there. It's easy for us to sit around an armchair quarterback and look at the numbers, but we didn't like the numbers when they were presented recently. They came back, they pulled out some things to get it closer to where we wanted to. Is P.S. Dewberry here tonight? That's a huge strike against them. I don't know why they don't have principals here. They should be here.
They were told that it was going to be pulled off the,
Well, that was pretty silly for them to believe that. You know, they didn't hear it from the council. I didn't think it was going to be pulled off. I thought we were going to go full speed ahead, and I pushed for it the other night. But now we have some more numbers to look at. I mean, we don't like these numbers when they pull out things that should be included possibly in their bid and then add them in as extras. The sheet that I have here shows that actually they're probably getting over 9%. I think we need to renegotiate with them. If they were here tonight, maybe the deal would be done. Maybe we would be going forward. I'm really saddened that they're not here. But I, as a general contractor, it's my prerogative that I can work a little bit more openly if I were doing it. But now that we're in the public sector, now we have there was a little bit of a discussion when it was thought that P.S. Dewberry should be paid to help figure out which construction manager that they would work with. I was very uncomfortable with that. I still am. To me, we should be able, as a council, to pick the construction manager that we want and hope that they're not too familiar with that architect. When you do, I've never liked the idea of architects having a percentage of the project because their incentive is to stretch it out and to run up the cost because they get a piece of the action every time they do add-ons or change orders or whatever. The process that we liked, or I liked the best, was one that I heard of that the DeKalb Clinic locally went through, where they hired a construction manager after they were already into an architect that they realized was going to cost them much more than they had budgeted. They took a step back. That construction manager came in and said, I'll hire an architectural firm and I will give you a price not to exceed, and they got a better deal than they even hoped for. That is what I thought we were going to probably end up with here. I don't know where we're at right now, but I thought we were just picking the architectural firm. I thought we were going to have the bid for the prints, and when it's coming in like this isn't anything like I envisioned. I apologize for not pressing the issue, but a couple $100,000 is too low. There's a lot more required. There's reporting, there's meetings, there's you probably even have to have a court reporter at these meetings because it's a public project. Things that we don't know when we're used to building in the private sector. But certainly, when we're looking at 9.3 and we're given estimates at the high end of what a police station would cost, we had hopes of 44,000 square feet. Now we're looking at 31 to 35,000 square feet. I still think we can have 40,000 square feet and be well under budget. And I think that we've either got to decide on throwing a proposal back at PSA Dewberry or put it out to bid for any architectural firm out there and then look at the bids and decide which one we want. But I definitely think the construction manager should be something that should be also decided on during a similar process and interviewed by us. I've said all along, I hope we get somebody that will work with DeKalb County labor, DeKalb County trades. I don't like seeing these projects where they hire people from out of state, who knows where, and they come into town and they build them and they go. I don't think that benefits the local economy. But the sheets that I've handed out give a couple of ideas. I want to hear from everyone else. But I definitely am very frustrated that, and I hope we can make a decision tonight. I mean, I'd like to hear from everybody else and get a second chance later to talk. Thank you.
Ms. Lash.
I have a couple of things. First, just a point of clarification on the sheet that Dave handed out. It said that the combined fees are $928,000. Is that accurate?
I don't think staff has seen that sheet, so I don't think we're in a position to comment on it. I don't know I don't know how that figure was calculated.
What he outlined was that the architectural fee is $807,000. However, there's a survey fee of $6,000, civil engineering fee of $38,000, geotech testing at $10,000, construction testing at $35,000, reimbursables at $25,000, and construction manager selection of $7,500.
I would love to be able to, off the top of my head, respond on each one of those individual dollar numbers, but I don't think any of us are in a position to. I can tell you that, for example, the civil engineering, the survey work, the geotechnical testing, a number of these things aren't a part of PSA's contract. They were pulled out of PSA's contract, and PSA would not be involved in them and wouldn't receive any fee, not even a percentage fee for the work. So it's things that would not be combined into PSA's fee. So a number of these things, I can tell you, I know off the top of my head, are not a part of PSA's fee, and PSA wouldn't receive any compensation for them.
If I may, if you would refer to page 2 of K1, in the third paragraph, Kristen, it mentions that the total cost would be $91,800, right? So there's a difference between Dave's numbers of about $13,300. So it's just a little bit difference there.
Well, and a significant part of that distinction that has to be made is the distinction between project cost and PSA's cost, because there are costs outside of the architectural design that have to be incurred for the building to go forward. The civil design, the civil engineering, the intersection design study, the geotechnical services, these are professional services that are required in order to build a building on that site. But they're not a part of the architectural fee, and they're not something that we can negotiate with PSA. And what we've done with the proposal that's before you is we actually renegotiated with PSA to pull those things out of their fee and to pull them out of the work that they would do based on what I think the staff had previously understood the direction of the board to be. So it's not something that we could go back and negotiate with them on those numbers, because it's not work that they're doing under this current proposal.
Well,
Okay, Brendan had something to say on the numbers real quick, and then I had one more thing to say.
Go ahead, please. You still have the floor. Oh, you have one more thing to say.
I'll yield to Brendan because he wants to talk about the numbers, and then I'll...
Yeah, I think the main thing, obviously, with the numbers, and what we decided upon back in the Finance Committee, remember, was a $12 million ceiling. And that was our hard number there. And as we start to back these numbers out, and I appreciate the fact that they were able to glean away $198,000 in savings, but I don't think it was significant enough. I guess my question, and what I asked the other council members, who a lot of them I'm sure agree with me on this, is that, what do you tip on in this type of situation? You go to a restaurant, and then do you tip on the actual amount that gets, the tax get put on it, or the actual part of the bill, right? Is it the $20 or the $22? What are you going to pay the tip on? And in this situation, you have all these incidentals that aren't part of the actual bid. They're just, well, you have to do a traffic study, and you have to do a geo study and everything else, right? So you pull all those different things off of the menu, but there still is a significant amount. And I think that's where the knee-jerk is for most of the members here, in the fact that it's $807,000, but it still is our money. It's not my money, it's our money. And I think that's where everyone has the sneaking suspicion then, if you take off that $941,800 off that $12 million, tell me if I'm wrong on this one here, $941,800, right? Then you're down to about $11 million. And if we're going to be going in at somewhere around 6%, it should be somewhere around $663,000. See, that's where all of a sudden there's the disconnect. Well, okay, and then it's like, well, it's not going to be at 6%. It needs to be a range between 6 and 8%. Okay, well, then you're on the high end then at 8%, which then, of course, makes anyone go back to what Mr. Baker said, what Ms. Lash is saying over here, is the fact that you start to think about this and go, if I've already found my site, and I've already got my financing, and I'm getting some numbers in from a respected and qualified bidder, but if I start to think that's too high of a number, what do? Just accept it? No, I'll bid it back out. I'll send it out, and I think that's the process that I think that the mayor had mentioned in the beginning. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, is to say, look, let's get some different opinions on this. And Dean, you can tell me.
Yeah, I guess the problem is you have to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. You have to make sure that if you're talking about a 6 or 7% design fee, that includes everything on two different proposals. So the PSA, our analysis in here talks about a 6.7% design fee for PSA, which is the architectural fee that's proposed in the agreement that was put before the council.
What's that 6.7% on?
On $10 million?
No, it's 6.7%, I think, on the $12 million cost.
Well, so then it is on everything, then.
Of the project?
6.7 of the entire expense.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The 6.725 is on the entire $12 million project, is where the numbers come in at.
Which
Do I pay the tip on the tax too? Do I pay the tip on everything?
Well, unless you're able to start by establishing what all your soft costs are going to be, and say, this is the number and we're not going to go past that.
That's an excellent point. So then you go out and you get the national average on square footage to build a police station within the Midwest, and you take the average, and it works out to be somewhere around $228 a square foot. Multiply that by 35,000, which is your base number, and you come up with $8 million. Aha! No soft costs. I have an $8 million project based on the national average for police stations that are built, and I take that number 8%, and I use 6% on that, and I'm somewhere around 480,000 to a high point of maybe 420,000. Or 520, excuse me.
I can't really...
560,000.
Well,
I can't really respond on the per square foot cost because I don't know where that's coming from. I can tell you that our experience and the matrix of information that we gave you from other communities and what they've experienced, I think is a pretty good exemplar of what the actual costs are here in the immediate area.
But that's the great thing about public oversight and why we were elected, is that we can all of a sudden push back and say, you know what, let's pump the brakes and we'll double check this whole thing.
Absolutely. But the biggest concern that I have in trying to understand and accommodate this council's direction moving forward is it's very difficult for staff to... I understand the urge to say, let's bid this out, and let's see what 10 different architectural firms would come in and say the cost is. That makes
10 different
perfect sense.
qualified firms, yep.
Yeah. I don't know how to design a request for bids that does that, because I'm not an architect. I can tell you the construction contract we have in front of you today, there is nowhere in that contract that it says the building has to have windows. It doesn't say the building has to have doors. It doesn't say the building has to have a roof. We're contracting with a known entity to produce a product at the end of the day that is going to include all of those things. But the contract doesn't require it. If you want us to put together bid specs that require someone to build something that's going to look like a police station at the end of the day, you're going to have those specs designed by an architect that's going to go through and say, these are all the things you need to ask for. You need to have so many electrical outlets in each office. And your bid specs better call for that, or you're going to get someone that's going to come in and design a building that doesn't have windows or doors and say, I can design it for 3%, and I can build it for less. These projects go in the way that they do, with you pick a contractor and then you work with them on a contract, because it's almost impossible on a project of this nature to get apples-to-apples bids.
Is PSA Dewberry the contractor on this also, as well as being the architect?
No.
No, the contractor for the architect. You mean a contract with the architectural
So
design?
they're not the general contractor. They just draw up all the blueprints and tell us how many electrical sockets to have in the building.
Well, as this project, in the current configuration, there would not be a general contractor. There'd be the architect and the construction manager and subcontractors. But the architect would be the one who would design the plans that would say, this is how many doors and windows there are going to be, this is how many outlets there are going to be.
So there's no additional cost for any type of construction manager, general contractor. It's all under the $807,000 umbrella.
No, the construction manager is a separate fee, and the city has not crossed that bridge yet.
Okay. Kristen, would you like to finish, please?
No problem. I had another question, and I forgot what that question was.
You want to think of it?
But I did want to say that, I do, from what I've heard from constituents, what I've heard from what I've seen in my own research, I do think we can do better than $807,000. However, whatever we decide, I don't want to put this off longer than we have to. We've been talking about this ever since I got here. It was talked about 10 years before I got here. I really want to see this happen by fall of next year, if possible. And if we can go out for bid and have them back in December or January, get somebody chosen, have the drawings done in March or April, as long as that can happen, I think we should go for it.
And I guess I don't know how. I don't know, frankly, how realistic that construction timeline is. I know that that's going to push us into next winter, which obviously has an impact on construction costs with winterization. But the fundamental underlying problem is, how do you describe this project in sufficient detail that you can go out and solicit bids and make sure that what you're coming back with is an apples-to-apples comparison, that you could design a insulated 35,000 square foot Morton building that for a lot less cost. And I know that's not what this council wants.
The architect would be included then.
And what I don't want to produce is a product that at the end of the day you look at and you're not happy with. So designing the bid specs to make sure you end up with a architect that you're happy with an architect that's going to design a project that you're proud of. Designing those if there was a simple way of designing bid specs to do that and to go out to bid, I think every community would be doing that. If we were not a home rule community, under Illinois law, the Professional Services Selection Act, for other municipalities, when they work on a project like this, they're expressly prohibited from doing that. They have to go out and pick the contractor first without regard to price, and then they go back and negotiate a price after they pick a qualified contractor. That process is designed that way to ensure that at the end of the day, you get someone that does work that you're happy with. Now, that obviously does not apply to us. We're home rule. But the concept behind that is the concept that's before you tonight, working with a contractor that's going to build something that meets your needs. And I mean this frankly. I'm really not trying to be flip. I don't know how to go about writing bid specs that would cover everything you need in a building, and that at the end of the day, I could tell you you're going to have an architect that's going to put everything in it that you need. That's a very difficult task.
Okay, two more really quick questions. I did remember my first question. Am I correct in my understanding that part of what they stripped out of the fees was the shooting range?
The fee that's before you tonight contemplates designing just the shell for that space, which would be built as a part of the building, not the actual design and equipment for the range itself.
Okay, is there any cost on what it would take to remodel the shooting range we have here so that they can use it?
We wouldn't want to do that. We would hold off, have them design the building to put the shooting range in there when we could afford it. Be like I've known other police departments that, or other public buildings that build to the future and leave a portion of the building unfinished so that they can come back and bring in some contractors to finish a room. They maybe leave it open wall, studded, no ceiling, you see the rafters, etc. It's just closed off. You use it for storage in the meantime. Same concept here.
I understand that. What would the police station do, though, what would the officers do for a shooting range for their practice?
We would use this one down here as long as the mold doesn't overtake us.
To say, when I went on my tour, I know I have asthma and allergies, but it overtook me in 30 seconds.
Well, absolutely, and that's why I don't understand putting this project off into year 13. You know, the $260 a square foot price, I don't believe includes a gun range. I don't believe it includes a dispatch center. There's additions that average fee, I'm sure, does not include. You had a recent law firm that you just hired that did a lot of research on this topic, and they gave you a lot of information on this topic. And now, you're not just hearing it from staff, you're hearing it now from the law firm that you just hired for an independent opinion. To delay this project, I think, is a big mistake. PSA has done a number of police stations. You've been told many, many times that a police facility is like a hospital. Not like a clinic, but like a hospital. That's a very complicated building. And they've done complicated buildings.
Follow-up question to that. Does the 31,000 to 35,000 square feet include the unfinished space, or is that 31,000 to 35,000 square feet of usable space, functional space?
In other words, is it 35,000 gross, and they're saying 31,000 because they're not finishing off the gun range? Is that what you're asking?
I don't think you're going to have the final square footage of the building either with either calculation, including or not including the gun range, until you have schematic design and cost estimates completed on that. As part of the contract contemplates, if they go through the initial phase of design, they work with the construction manager on cost estimates and get those back. If the cost estimates come in low, then you can have more square footage, and the architect is obligated to do a redesign after cost estimates to expand it. If they come in high, it would contract it. So it would be determined based on the market cost at that time.
Sorry, Dean. The other thing I was going to say earlier is, we talk about getting the best bang for our buck. I live in this town too, and I pay taxes in this town. And we're trying to do that and yet balance quality, durability, having this project last the way public buildings should last. We went with some local people that decided they wanted to save this town some money the last time we built a fire station, and we got a piece of junk. But they all bragged about how much money they saved the taxpayers. So I think you have to balance quality and building something correct for the future, like we did with the high school and some of these other public buildings.
One last thing, I promise it's the last thing. I also came across a fire station, and actually David's the one who told me about this, so David, correct me if I'm wrong, but a fire station that bought architectural prints that they liked of another station that had been built previously and saved a lot of money on their architectural costs that way. Is that something that's feasible for us?
I would imagine it's, you have to pay something for those plans.
If you could find another fire station or police station of comparable size on a site that's similarly oriented and adapt them directly over, I don't know if you're going to find that station or not.
Because that would save us a little bit of time and the money that we're talking about.
And the other thing is that you also want a building that can blend in. I think that one thing that the university wants is some input in how the building looks. When they said this, this is a local decision, that they want us to build, something that blends in and is complementary. I mean, we can all be very proud of how that high school looks and how the Farm Bureau building looks. I don't think they went overboard on either one of them. As a citizen, I'm proud of both of those buildings. That's something else you want to...
Mr. Tarazinski.
A couple things, and I guess I'm going to follow up on Dean's question, and I'm not sure that you ought to be answering for economic discussions relative to this whole process rather than legal opinion about, the approach to this. It's too bad our city manager's not here who would generally answer that. But when it comes to process, you described a process about what takes place in a professional service contract, if you will, and going through that process. And you described a process, if we went on home rule, that would take you down this path and get you to a decision point. At the end of that process, there's a negotiation piece that deals with price. And I would guess at the end of that process, there can be a step where that community can still walk away if they're not satisfied. And at that point, we didn't finish what comes next and what would happen to that community at that point. Could you describe that process at that point?
Yeah, until our hypothetical non-home rule community contracts with an architect, they're not bound to that architect. They could go back to reevaluating the different architects and select someone else that may also offer quality services.
So they could do that on a second or a third basis and get to effectively a price negotiation, if you will, to get to an acceptable number by both parties.
I think it would be dangerous for a non-home rule community to engage in something that looked like that, but again, those constraints don't apply to the city. The practical concern that I have with regard to the city is legally there's not a reason we can't go to request bids for this. The practical concern I have is just about making sure that we have a description of the project.
And I understood that. I mean, I understood you said that.
But there's no legal reason we can't do that. It's a
So that's an alternative. I mean, we had a second and a third choice. All were pre-qualified. All were reviewed by committee. Multiple people sat in and discussed alternatives. And I'm sure the chief sat through numerous of those over the last 7 or 8 years. The one I was party to had the final 2 people, 2 architectural firms, and this one was chosen, but that was not based on price. It was based on their professional presentation and the work that they had recently done and the expertise that they presented, very similar to how we hired the law firm, interestingly enough. We did that same process, and we did that on a professional basis. Now, you describe a process that doesn't exist, apparently, at least in your experience, but are you saying no one that you're aware of in the state has ever bid out a professional contract? Without specs, I can't imagine anybody doing it with specs to the building, because now you've already determined the building's outcome, rather than just saying, I want a high-quality police station comparable to X, Y, Z, on a par with our new high school as an equivalency from a quality standpoint, masonry, brick, et cetera, and we want you to bid that given this location and what we can tell you about our background. Is that not possible?
I'm not sure how exactly we would go about evaluating 2 different bids. If you brought them in, and I'm carrying your hypothetical forward, and we have 2 different architects that come in, and one says we can do it for 807, and one says we can do it for 707. I'm not sure how you go about evaluating what the differences in those 2 designs are going to be.
Okay. Tom, how did you decide when you said price was not part of it?
The price was just largely the way we did the legal firm. It's based on their background, their expertise, how close they were to us, what they presented as their professional background, and how they could support our city. So it was based on their professional attributes.
They didn't give you, the 2 companies that you looked at?
There's no price.
So they could have been 12% as far as you knew when you said that
company.
There's
no price. All you're doing is a professional service contract that's without even knowing what the building number was.
Help me out, please. If firm number 2 would have done it at 6, and firm number 1 might have done it at 12.
We never got that.
Well, if, let's hypothetically talk.
I mean, that's why I was asking about could we go to a second phase.
So you're recommending, if I could interrupt here, are you recommending that maybe we go out to this other firm and say, what can you do for us?
What I'm trying to do is find out now, after Dean has basically described a process that doesn't exist, and I think he's having trouble supporting anything beyond what's our next step. I'm ready to move forward now. We've got 5 people who don't want to do this. I'm wondering what our options or what we can do to move forward. That's where I'm going.
Okay, so the range of options pretty much the sky's the limit. You've determined, if there's a determination you don't want to go forward with this contract, you could go back and renegotiate again with this contractor. You could go back to another contractor that participated in another architect, let me use that term just for clarity, another architect that participated in a previous selection process and was also highly recommended, or you could go back and seek new qualifications from any architectural firm and see who responds and go through a similar process. If you want to talk about designing a different process, you could do that as well. There's not a legal constraint. We just get back to the practical question of how do you do it? How do you describe the project?
And you've indicated a couple times, I'm going to ask one more time, you know of no one in the state of Illinois, from a community standpoint, that has bid an architectural firm or professional service similar to what's being described as really just an open bid with a fairly loose description of what's needed. You know, we want a high-quality police station located on this facility, on this space, And we also want to be able to expand it to 56,000 square feet, which is another concern of mine about the idea of purchasing a set spec, which is, set that aside for now, but I'm concerned about that, given where we're going to go in the long term, that we are asking these people, at least I understood, to predetermine where that next addition is going to go so that it will be fully functional at that larger space if needed, that we spent so much time discussing. So I'm concerned about that. But coming back to the question, can we not do that?
For a building of this nature, a police department, and for a project that's contemplated to go forward, architect, construction manager, instead of design build or a completely different design format, I can't think of any communities off the top of my head that have gone through having 4 or 5 different architectural firms, or a number of firms, or more than one, come in and submit bids to design the project in that fashion. No.
Okay, so you've never heard of it, so that's a problem to our ability to move that process forward. In my view, I mean, given the expertise and, the background that has already been done here, so that leaves us with the first process, pretty much.
Yes.
We can go to step 2, we can renegotiate with these guys, but we're kind of back to that side of the process.
Unless we go to design build, which is poorly suited for a project of this nature.
No, I would not support that at all.
Or unless we try and invent a new process that does involve this bidding, but...
Okay, well, I'm going
that
to
would be practically
yield the floor with those 2 items on the table, because I don't see how we go forward without going back to the first process, and I'm concerned about the idea of going out and just buying, spec'd out. I like the idea, I just don't know that it would work in this circumstance, given what we're trying to accomplish on the longer term. And the quality level, in my perspective, has to be at least as what we got at the high school. I agree with the chief, this is a quality police department. It's reflected in that building, it's reflected in our community. It needs to be a good, solid, firm statement.
And if you want to save $300,000 or $400,000, the delays that this is going to take is likely to eat that up.
And those delays, could you, from your perspective, what would those costs be that would cause an increase if we delay it, maybe even 60 to 90 days?
Well, you have the cost of, if we don't get that building enclosed
By
next winter, you have the foundations exposed, all right, to the elements if you just stop construction, or if you have to enclose portions of the building or the building envelope it, when they're doing work, that creates problems and you have to heat it, adding, I was told at one time, $200,000 to $400,000 to the project, or you can delay construction until 2013, at which time we're already seeing some pressures, what I've been told, some pressures in rising cost in the construction field. Not seen it in the housing field, but as you drive around the suburbs and different places, you're starting to see commercial buildings, retail buildings, some of these buildings being built now. All right? And so some of those costs are going up. Commodity costs are very well likely to go up. The trades unions, maybe some of their hourly rates have been flat, but you know what? Their workman's comp and their medical insurance rates are going up just like they are for the city. So, I think in that respect, easily $200,000 to $400,000 that you're going to increase these costs. PSA is a well-known firm and well-respected.
Thank you. Someone who hasn't spoken yet, Mr. Naylor?
Yes, thank you. This has gone on quite a good number of years, and it's getting to a point of almost being ridiculous as to how we're trying to micromanage all this stuff. I realize there's some concerns with regards to cost out there, and I too had concerns when the initial draft agreement was submitted, as well as I've had concerns over the past several years with regards to other issues dealing with the police department, but I've come to recognize that that's what the majority wants regarding location, etc. So I've committed to supporting that and going forth with the police department development construction. Haven't had some experience over my career regarding consultants and consultant agreements, engineering and architectural agreements. I've obviously scrutinized this one fairly closely and raised several questions there a month or two ago, and now have looked at it again as it has come back as a negotiated process, in which I might also comment on the qualification-based selection process, which all professionals and professional services are supposed to be secured under, and which the City of DeKalb has adhered to, for the best of my knowledge, for probably 30 or 40 years, in most all of their selections, if not all of them, to the best of my knowledge on it. And we were progressing down a similar route on this one here. I believe the city, over the past 3 years, 4 years, has gone through the QBS process twice, and most recently the third time with the final two selected architects, in which PSA Dewberry was the chosen one. And the typical process, as the attorney has alluded to, is to select the firms based upon their qualifications, and then sit down, and then you determine a scope of work as to what that architect then is to submit his fees based upon, and the types of services that are to be provided, and thence attach a number to that with regards to cost estimates and then the estimated fees, and which has been done in this case, and now has been gone back, reevaluated and reviewed and negotiated, and to where the architect has now come forth with this series and cost that's before us. And I know there was some concern initially with regards to percentage of fee regarding this, and when you look at it, it's sort of like, numbers can lie and liars can number, but when you compare apples to apples, in which our attorneys have provided us some comparables of police stations within the area, and these are project costs, those fees are total cost on it, so I'm assuming that's a project fee cost, which in our case is like 6.7, I think, %, compared to Montgomery, which was 8%. Their village hall was 8.1. Sugar Groves was 7.75. North Aurora's big police facility, which is, I believe that's like an $80 or $90 million project. Their fee was a little bit lower at 6.1. Others that they provided here, the current one that we're looking at is well within that. When you then go in and look at their fee and really evaluate it, their fee of $807,000 for the actual building work, which is a little over $8 million, comes up to about 9.3 or 9.4% of that actual building. But when you look at what they're providing in that scope of services, 25% of that, as according to their proposal, is towards the construction phase of the work. So taking off 25% of that 9.4 or 9.5%, you'd be back down around that 7 or under 7% of actual design fee for the building itself, which I believe is very reasonable. Also, when you compare their numbers with some information here that was provided by Mr. Mason to all of the council members here, out of the RS means building construction cost data, if you look at that, they put down here on the bottom of this one page here, I think it's the last page, at the bottom where they estimate what the contractor fees are and what the architect fees are. The architect fees on this one here is estimated at 9%. When you look at the cost of construction on a per square foot basis, and in this particular one here for police stations, and Mr. Mason selected the middle of the road, the median cost. They have the lower quartile cost of 144, the median cost at 189, and the upper quartile cost, the three-quarter cost, is at 239 per square foot. So there's a lot of range, a lot of variation between cost on a square foot basis of what a building would cost, depending upon the quality of the project and all the amenities that are put into it. Surprisingly enough, that upper quartile, the three-quarter quartile cost of $239 per square foot compares quite favorably to the one that PSA Dewberry put together. When you divide the $8,362,900 by the 35,020 square feet of building that you're going to get, that comes out to $238.80. So that's obviously somewhere probably up in that upper third quartile of cost, which is a higher quality, most likely, of a building than a median of cost. So if you want to downsize and take something of lesser quality, yes, you could get down, but I'm certain the architect is providing numbers that is in a quality range base that he envisioned that the city would like to see in that building, just as Alderman Tarazinski spoke about a little bit earlier about the quality of the product. And I know that was very true in the new high school, because I sat on that facilities committee there likewise, and we indicated that we wanted a facility of medium to above quality, a good, high-quality type of building on it. So I'm not quite for certain what all the discussion and what all the concern is about all these numbers. In my experience, it's very typical that you have the architectural fees, and then you have all the other fees above and beyond that, which is the site work, the civil engineering, the geotesting, the soil borings, the construction testing, the survey work is typically always outside of that architectural or that basic fee. So I can support at this point in time the current agreement as it is, and I would request that the other fellow council members reconsider their thoughts on this and be able to move forth on it. I don't see any savings out there by going back and trying to select other consultants. Yes, you could do that. I agree with the attorney. I don't understand. I would not know how you would put together an RFP that would be definitive enough for consultants out there, architects, to be able to submit a proposal with so many unknowns currently, whether it's going to be 30,000 square feet, 34,000 square feet, 40,000 square feet out there, and without knowing any of the details of that to give you a firm, fixed number on it. The way we have done it, the way we were going through the process, is the appropriate process. We've done all of the necessary work, in my opinion, that needs to be done, and we should just move forth with this agreement. If you don't like this particular firm or this agreement, then to me you would follow the procedure in the QBS process, which is then you fall back to the next ranking architect firm that you interviewed, and if you didn't like that one, then you could go back to the third one. Or if not, then you go all out and you start over again with a QBS process. I would move that. We move forth with the current agreement. Mr. Jacobson.
I've obviously listened to several comments, and I have several to make. With the law firm, I disagree that we did do it as a necessarily just quality base. I mean, if we looked at it completely without the numbers and we all decided, you know, Firm X or Firm Y was the great choice, and they came in at $500 or $600 an hour, which is twice what we should be paying, we would have said no. We wouldn't have just accepted them because we liked them the best in their presentation. And I mean, I think that's important to look at here. I mean, we took 2 or 3 companies or whatever it was in the last round, and we looked at it with no cost numbers whatsoever. And I think that's a problem. I think that should be thrown into the mix, just as we're doing with the lobbyist process now and we did with the attorney process. I don't think it's any different than we did with them. We knew up front what those costs would look like, and that was a determining factor in some of our decisions. I think Ron made several assumptions. Because you pay more, you get a better quality product. I know if you walk into a car dealership and pay sticker price on a car, you get the same car as I did, making a great deal on the same car. So I think that's an assumption that's national averages, that we should be closer to the middle of that average, being in the Midwest, being that we're in a small town. The people that are paying more very well could be represented by communities with corporate authorities that are irresponsibly spending their money. You see that all over this country. And I don't want to be one of those communities if we can go out and get a better deal for it. I know Bill has talked about building for the future, and I agree with you. But at the same time, we're hearing now from Dean that based on the time that they could come back and even cut it shorter than 31,000 square foot.
You know, I
What
wish,
if they come back at the price and say, we can only give you 25,000 square foot? Then no one's going to be happy with that station. We spent too much money, and you get a station you're not
this is
happy
this is like a moving target. You know, half the time, most of the time, you guys want comparables, and ladies. You want comparables, and we provide the comparables, and then you say, they're probably wrong.
Again, we're
Laura
seeing,
worked for Pengree
we're
Grove.
seeing national
She
comparables
worked, she
that are
she
vastly
saw how
different than the numbers
PSA
are.
operated. She's
And
extremely
even based
correct.
on those comparables, when you look at what we're going to spend on this building, we're well at the high end of the cost, above 8% at this point. So why are we spending more than other communities are that are doing the same thing we are? I know in 2007 that there was a push to get this done and all that, and if we'd done it then, we would have spent much more in costs, in materials, and labor, and all those things, and in bond rates.
And if you did
And we
it,
didn't,
and
we
if the
held off,
council
and now
would
we're
have
gonna
did
save
it
a lot of
back
money
in
on it.
2000, when when we first started talking about this 12 years ago, and 3 architects later, it would have been a lot less. We could have had the 55,000 square foot building for 12 million.
Again, I think we can get this proposal, if we figure out how to do it, we can get it out and back in time to start building, and more than enough time to get it foundation and under roof by the time we need to.
Anyone else for a first time? Monica, did you want to weigh in?
Yes. I know Dean had said something earlier about a design build would not be good. Why not? Could you explain why, Dean?
Design build works very well for like if you're designing a public works building or a parking building or a warehouse, if you're designing something where there's not a lot of science behind the design, and you just need kind of a blank canvas within which to park trucks or stack pallets. Because of the unique function of a police station and the different processes that it has to work for and the different roles it has to fulfill and the different type of building occupants that you're going to have going through it, a design build just leaves way too much open to, you don't know what the finished product is going to be. It leaves too many questions open as to what you're going to ultimately end up with, and not enough involvement in the actual building composition, what it's going to look like, how it's going to function. So just for this particular type of project, it would be a really unorthodox, and again, difficult to implement process to use.
Okay. So do we know exactly how we want this police station to look? I mean, I hear we have about the shooting range, no range, or the communication parts. Do we have an idea of what we're looking at for this building? And if we, like, even we thought about bidding out, what would we send them? What do you give them if we have no idea of how it's supposed to look, or do we have an idea already?
We have an idea as far as the space needs and the functions that we need to plan for in this building. But what you don't know is how you want the building to look. You know, as far as, you want a prairie style, you want, how you want it to blend in. That's part of the architect's job. And you're going to ask him for, give us a concept drawing, give us 2 or 3 choices, and then the community will choose, with the university's input, like they've asked, as far as the design, how it's going to look, so it's going to blend in, and as far as that goes, that design hasn't even been conceptually drawn.
Okay. So when we have these totals for architect, and they don't know what it's going to look like, how do we go with these totals even?
The totals are the cost for designing it for coming up with what it is going to look like. We know the constituent component parts that have to go in the building, and the architect's job is to design both the exterior, what it looks like, and how it feels from the outside, and also the function of the inside, how the building is put together, where the hallways lead, what ways doors swing, how it works. So part of the selection process is, and I wasn't here for the process involving PSA, but part of the selection process customarily is looking at other work that the architects have done, other similar buildings, getting an idea for how they design, talking to other communities or businesses that have used them, and getting a comfort level with the product that you think they're going to put together. But the issue that you're reaching for is the issue that I share your concern about. It's very difficult to say, we want a building that looks like this when you're hiring someone to design your building, because that's the professional service that we're trying to contract for.
So if they build a building that looks like this here, then we've paid this amount for what we have now?
Well, I think your selection process is intended to select someone who is going to design something that you're going to be happy with.
I wasn't here when they had the selection process,
Right.
so I've never seen their work or anything like that.
And a component of the process that's contemplated before you, the contract that's before you, is a design process that gives opportunities for the city to have input in the design. They come forward with drawings, and there's the opportunity to revise them based either on concerns about the design and function of the building, or concerns about the cost of the building, or concerns about the actual numbers from cost estimates. So there's not we can't point you to a drawing today and say this is what it's going to look like, or this is how it's going to function, because that's what you're trying to hire right now.
Okay, so then my next question is, so why are we about to make a motion to table something that we know we need a police station, but we're going to table something indefinitely? And I'm just sitting here like, why indefinitely? Why not to a certain time until we can figure out exactly what we want, instead of table something indefinitely when we need a police station?
I'll respond if I may. The reason we were considering tabling this is because there's obviously some questions. And I know a number of the council members weren't here when we discussed this with PSA, and that's why we want to say, okay, we want to answer your questions more and more, rather than voting this down right away. If we can answer your questions, we'll do that. That's why we're considering, why don't you postpone it for a while? We can answer any of your concerns. And again, this has been vetted to two subcommittees with two aldermen on both subcommittees. And that's fine. I mean, and they're no longer here. Well, I'm sorry, Alderman Jarzynski is here. So we wanted to make sure that at least everyone understood and got their answers, their questions answered before we proceeded. Because we can tell, obviously, there was some uncomfortability in total. And I'm sorry, Chief, go on.
But I guess for me, my concern was the indefinitely part, because it's almost like Dean said, we're killing it. We're about to just bury it because we have questions.
If I could jump in and answer that, my fear is if it's voted down tonight, we have killed it. And then we're back to square one. And I don't want us to, in an hour, kill something that we have spent the last 10 years, but specifically with this particular architectural design, have vetted 3 times and have come up with a solution.
Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead, Chief. You wanted to jump in? Or?
Well, it's just that, I understand we're spending a lot of money. I understand that, a lot of the council wasn't here when we went through that process. But there are a lot of items that governmental units get involved with one council, and it carries to another council. But we can't kill a project just because you weren't sitting where you're sitting at the time. We have to keep moving forward with this. This police facility discussion has gone past too many councils and mayors. That's it.
So I think we need to come up with a solution then, instead of tabling it indefinitely.
I hope so. Absolutely. We need to move on this.
Okay, let me jump in. Everyone has had a chance to speak, and then we'll go for round 2. Much has been said on both sides. I believe that I've heard a lot about timing is important, we need to move forward, yet it appears we want to stop the process right now. We've talked about wanting to get our trade unions back to work, but yet we're halting this project to get our trades back to work. We've talked about wanting to have a place safe for our citizens to come and a safe place for our officers to work in, and yet we're pulling this back. We have past vetted this, I hate that word, but we have vetted this 3 times. We have gone through this qualification selection process where I think aldermen 3 different times have said this is the firm we want to move forward with. We know, again, and let me jump in. There's been no one who's been more of an individual in the years I've sat up here that hates spending money on this kind of thing before we even buy our first brick. But it's part of the process, so those first bricks are the good ones. It's not a sticker price. We're not paying sticker price for this, Alderman Jacobson. We are very comparable. I think I can't even go into the detail that Ron talked about here, that these are very comparable. This is comparable. This is the cost of doing business within the type of facility that we're putting together. I think to go out to an RFP, I see RFP on this thing Alderman Baker gave me, and expecting, first of all, what I heard from our attorney who has worked with other cities, that you don't RFP this. I think we're mixing up what an RFP even is, and then to have it out of City Hall by the 12th and back to City Hall by the 12th, which is approximately 2 weeks, and back by the 21st, I think is just unreasonable. I think there's enough data here, and there's enough comparisons, and there's enough information that we need to move forward on this. And at the very least, I would like to see us maybe contact the second firm that is a firm that could maybe do something different. We don't have to go through the selection process, see what their thoughts are, or even Alderman Naylor suggested maybe we could have PSA Dewberry meet with you as individuals so you feel more comfortable with them. But as the chief said, I don't buy the fact that because we don't know the firm that we can't trust that they are the best firm to do it. I think we're making a big mistake by not moving forward. I think that this will cost us more in the long run, and I think we're micromanaging this. I think it's been vetted. I think it's been discussed. I think it's been looked at from every which way, from here to there. And I think it really gets down to we just don't like having to spend the money on an architectural firm, which I don't like doing it either, but it's the part of doing business. Second round, please. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor Paulson. I appreciate that. Just looking over everything, and I'll be very brief on this stuff. Tell me first on page 2 of K1, right, when it says, and Rudy, you might be able to speak to this, when we pulled this off the agenda from a few weeks ago, it was because we had preliminary indication that we thought $1.139 million was a lot of money to spend on an architect. Correct or incorrect?
Correct.
Correct, thank you. So then it gets pulled off, and we get back in here on this page that says, all right, we've gone back, we've relooked at it, we've pulled out some of these different things, and it equates back to a savings of $198,120 from the initial, from the first or preliminary estimate.
Can I just throw in one point on that initial cost? Just so, again, so we're comparing apples to apples, that initial cost of $1.139 million was not architectural. That was architectural plus surveying, civil engineering, the intersection design, which by itself is $46,000, the geotechnical, and the construction phase testing.
All right, that's $134,800, which has been significantly pulled out in that paragraph right below there. But there still is a gap of $200,000 roughly. That's the savings, right?
Right. There have been other changes in the scope of services that are to be provided as well.
Firing range?
Firing range.
Firing range, right?
Has been removed.
Firing range, and that saved us $200,000 from architectural, I would imagine, right? I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that was pulled off of there. My point, when I look at this, if you go to page 1 of the AIA agreement, it's right there. It says right there, it says for the following project, 30 to 35,000 square feet with an estimated building cost of $8.2 million and an estimated total project of $12 million to be built on designated 3-acre site. I look at $8.2 million for a building cost, and I take the $807,000, and that roughly works out to be 10% architect's fees. That doesn't go with the national averages. Again, as someone else just mentioned up here, it's on the high side. And, it comes back to the same old thing. Well, what do we want? What do we want for a building? We want a piece of crap. We want a good building. I'm fine with a good building. I don't want it to be 2% of the cost. I'd like it to be more in line with 6% of the costs, right? But I think 10% on that. Now, you're going to take the total cost and say, no, Alderman Gallagher, it's the total cost, right?
The only thing that I would point out is that the numbers that are in the staff memo to the board that compare the 6.7% against other communities, those numbers are all based on the total cost. So I don't know, just so we're doing apples to apples, I don't know if the other information that we're relying on is based on construction costs or total costs. I know that the comparables we give you are based on total cost.
Correct. All right. And I appreciate your article that you wrote, Dean, in that particular magazine on the building a solid future, the primer for the construction of public buildings. And in one of your first paragraphs, you say one of the biggest issues that face a public agency is how to select a construction manager, making that big determination to select and go forward. In this particular project, when you look at the breakout on the actual spreadsheet, that works out to be, I believe, somewhere around 6.2% just for the construction manager on the actual building cost. Again, I'm just going with what the building cost is. I'm not taking in any of the incidentals. So I understand that there's the construction manager part of it, there's the general contractor part of it, and then, of course, there's the architect part of it. So the concern there for me is there's a lot of different fees. I'm with the mayor. I don't like to pay all these different fees. I would be up to the idea from a compromise to move this forward following what Alderwoman O'Leary said. To move this forward, why not? If this particular firm can send out and give us a quote for $807,000 plus incidentals on this AIA contract, why can't we provide the exact same information to all these other qualified firms that have done police stations before and just send it out and say, all right, here's where we are with the contract, and can you give us some numbers back on that? Can't be done?
Well, for one, we've just announced to every architect firm in the Midwest what price has already been shot to us. That's not right to PSA.
It's an open session, right? We are the final check writers on this particular business opportunity.
I understand that.
And if we say to them, you know what, I don't want $807,000.
You're trying to get bids, right?
I just want to get some estimates. Can someone else who can build a building do that, come back with a better...
So what do you think the other estimates are going to be when they come in?
Not $1 million, I don't think. Probably below $807,000, I would imagine.
And if we do that and those numbers come back, you're going to ask what's the difference between the services that the different architects are proposing to provide.
Right. They're going to provide us with examples of references of other buildings that they've built before in the past.
Didn't we go through this process once?
Not with me.
3 times.
Not with me.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
When I got in here 2 years ago, you were going to build a $20 million building down there, and you were going to raise all these taxes to pay for it. Instead, we kind of stopped that whole thing.
No, but we should be at 55,000
Now we understand how we're going to pay for it. Now we understand how we're going to pay for it, but let's not get screwed here in the end, and let's do it the correct way instead of the same old way that typical councils have done it on other cities where they just ram something through.
If we'd be doing it the correct way, we'd be doing it at 50 to 55,000 square feet.
Okay. It would have been done.
And it wouldn't have been done. Okay, go ahead, Mr. or Ms. Lash.
I've been listening to a lot of comments. I disagree that if this is shot down, we'd be back at square one. We've done more in 7 months than has been done in the past 10 years. We have the funding mechanism. We have a location. We've decided, on everything except for this architect. And if we turn down this architect, that doesn't undo all the other work we've done in the past 7 months. Monica said she wasn't here. Brendan said he wasn't here. I wasn't here. Dave Jacobson wasn't here. You've got the majority of the council who wasn't here for the selection process.
Nor have even met PSA Dewberry. Don't even know them.
They've been here at several meetings.
Never come up to me. Never even have said one thing to me.
That's because you usually end up going back into closed session. If that was a concern, Brendan, why didn't the council say, hey, we'd like to meet with you? You know what? You met with Mason 2 at a time. Why didn't you say, hey, why can't we meet with PSA 2 at a time?
and discuss this.
When was that meeting with Mason?
You tell me.
Good, please tell me, look at my calendar and let me
Please,
know.
Mr. Alderman, please.
Please don't assume.
I
didn't assume.
You know, when we went through the selection process for the attorney selection, I thought it was a really good process. I do disagree with you on one point that fees were part of the process. There was a table that showed us the qualifications alongside the fees they were going to charge, and we took both into account. You know, I don't want to put this off. I really, really don't want to put this off. I want to see the police station built by this time next year. What options do we have in order to look at other architects but still have it done by next year?
Again, I can't make a promise on the timeline, but the options are either looking at one of the other contractors that's been evaluated by a previous council, which may or may not subject itself to the same concerns that have been raised tonight, or starting the selection process over, or coming up with an alternate process and for going out to bid.
I mean, what about Mr. Terzinski's idea of looking at the architects, you know, pick another one or two that were in the top choices of the last selection committee and compare the three side by side with qualifications and fees included, like we looked at with the attorneys?
I wasn't involved in the PSA selection process, and I have no particular allegiance to them. And I think we're happy to put together whatever kind of process you want going forward. In order for example, for me to help that be an effective process, I think what would be most helpful is understanding the criteria that you're going to use to evaluate the different contractors. So we make sure that they speak to those. If we go out with, if we say, here's the AAA contract that we negotiated with PSA, and we ask other contractors to bid on that, they will come in, and I think Alderman Gallagher is exactly correct. It would be inconceivable to me that anyone would submit a bid that's higher than PSA's bid. So then the question is, what is the work that they're going to do compared to what is the work that PSA is going to do?
And how did they decide that in the first selection process? Because they supposedly decided on everything except for price. So they did look at what work they were going to do. So how is that different than looking at the same information but with price included and seeing where we can get high quality but maybe some savings?
And my only concern about that is one of the central criticisms that's been raised tonight is that this council, many members of it, didn't have participation in that process. And I don't know what information we as staff are going to be able to bring forward to allow you to make an informed decision on a different contractor at a different price that's going to tell you what the practical differences are in the end product. There is...
well, do we not still have the packets or presentations or whatever that they gave us in the last selection process that we can take a look at and just call them up and say, what's your cost estimate?
I think I'm sure we have that documentation and could give it to you, but I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this, and it's if you rated PSA as a A-rated contractor and you're willing to pay between $90,000 and $100,000 for them, and you rated architectural firm B as a B-rated contractor and you're willing to pay between $80,000 and $90,000 for them, and so on down the line, that would make it a very easy process for you as a council to evaluate. I don't know, because I wasn't a part of that process, I don't know what the difference, the qualitative difference between PSA and another firm was perceived to be, and I don't know what information we as staff are going to be able to provide you with respect to another architectural firm that's been previously considered that's going to give you a comfort level that you are getting a good value with them and you're going to get a product you're happy with in the end. So whether you choose PSA or a different firm, I just want to make sure whatever process we use, you reach the end of the day and you're happy with that value proposition, that you feel you're getting a good value and you're going to get a good product. There is an element of faith in any contract that involves professional services. You have to accept and be happy with the contractor you're working with. You have to be exposed to them and be comfortable with them. and you have to make a decision based on their professional competency as best as you can judge it. And that's the part of this that we can't quantify and give you a comparison table saying, you know, Pinger Grove's architects were very professional and this community's architects were very unprofessional, but they were a lot cheaper. So I just want to make sure we're going to give you a process that's going to answer this question.
Right. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know for me, in order to both be able to compare some prices and yet not put this off too far, I would be happy with seeing the packets or the presentations or whatever that the other selection committees got to see, alongside the estimates of cost for those services, and then, you know, maybe postpone this until the first meeting in December, and that way we can still have an architect by December.
Can I just sort of comment? I mean, if you're going to put all these other consultants through the process that they don't know anything about. Now, who's going to answer all their questions? What kind of a packet are you going to put out there without sitting down and going through a process similar as was done with the final selected firm? You sat down and you wrote your scope of work as to exactly what all is included in that. And you're going to have to go through that same process with anyone else that you're going to invite. And then they're going to want more detail. They're going to want more information. It's going to take time. And if you do that with, you know, maybe there's a half a dozen firms, I would highly doubt you're going to get too many responses. You know, we are making such a fiasco and a mess out of this that you're going to have anybody out there willing to work for the city of DeKalb, and particularly going through a process like this. I can't imagine anyone really at this point in time, outside of somebody from way out in Timbuktu, that don't know what's been going on around here and over the amount of time that we spent on this process. It's very difficult to go back now and sort of renege on the process that you put out there that you're going to follow in this selection of an architect. And very unfair to PSA Dewberry of all the time they've put into it and the cost. And you're going to pull the rug out from underneath them now. I can understand renegotiating with them, which they've done. The staff's come back and have renegotiated, have cut out some items, have further defined, detailed, get all those outside things that went earlier, maybe as an extra, into the basic cost, as the base cost. You know very well what's in, what's not in, the basic cost. You know the percentages, you know the fees. Even if you went back and looked at those other submittals that was submitted at the time of the qualification, there's no fees or cost associated with them. They might have listed their per hour fees that they typically charge, similar to what the attorneys did when you went through that process, but that doesn't indicate to you what the cost is going to be. That's just what their hourly fees would be, and that's going to depend upon the number of hours that they estimate that's going to have to go into the design of the project. Everybody does it basically a little bit differently, but quite often, most often, they end up being quite similar, and you fall back to the bit of qualifications as to how qualified is that firm out there that you want to work with and you feel comfortable with. It's not so much the bottom line dollar.
Well, I don't know if I'm, you know, not making myself clear. Well, you know, exactly. I want to see the proposals, the submittals that came in last time. All we got to do is call them up and say, remember the submittal, what's a cost estimate?
They do not present a cost estimate when they respond to a statement of qualifications for providing professional services. That's not how it's, they were not called an RFP, or request for proposal. A proposal indicates that you want some dollars and cents in it. I'm certain that is not how it was done. It was a statement of qualifications, because at that time, you didn't know what you were going to do.
Point of order.
You didn't know amount.
This is your third time, Ron. Come on.
You had a
Ron,
general
yes,
process on it.
Ron's spoken twice. Do you have
3
anything else
times
to
now.
say?
I'm counting.
Just, you know, just the question of, is what I was proposing possible to do? Just to have this information, be able, since the majority of the council wasn't involved in the selection process, just to be able to go over that information so that we can make ourselves a little more comfortable and bring this back by December 1st, or the first meeting in December, I should say.
So, just so I understand, you're asking, so we would give you the backup information on the other contractors, which I suspect Mr. Naylor is correct, Alderman Naylor is correct, and it doesn't have the cost figures in it. Do you want us to contact the other contractors, the other potential architects, and talk to them about a fee, provide them with a copy of this contract, and ask them to comment on it? I don't mean to belabor the point. I just want to understand exactly what it is that the council wants.
Is that possible with the AIA agreement? Can you give someone else a copy? I mean, I have a copy in front of me.
Yes, and it is very, two different architects could both fulfill the terms of this contract and design two different projects that would be very different. As I said before, part of the professional services, you're asking them to design something, and you have to have an element of faith that what they're going to design is something you're happy with. It's clear from a lot of the comments that some of you don't have that faith, and I'm not challenging that, but I want to make sure that if we do something different, if we go back however many steps, if it's back to the drawing board or back a step or two, that we put something in front of you that gives you confidence in the project that's before you.
Yeah,
So
I can't speak for anybody else, but if I just had the full information from those selection committees and was able to compare with something else. Right now, all I have is this. All I have is saying 3 years ago, a selection committee chose PSA Dewberry, and here's the contract that was agreed upon 2 or 3 years ago.
And 2 weeks ago, it was $200,000 higher, now it's a little bit lower. And you only have one.
Please.
So, what I would like to be able to do is just compare with the full information. Maybe I'll come to the same conclusion that the selection committee did and be comfortable with PSA, or maybe I won't, but I would like that chance to go over the full information before I make my vote.
And by the full information, you mean the backup that was previously submitted, but you don't want staff to go out and try negotiating contracts or coming up with cost numbers from other architects?
I mean, that would be nice, but it's not necessary.
Could Alderman Tarazinski, I think he talked a little bit to this process, but he was on that committee, either if he can describe it or if he can meet with you, or if PSA can come in and meet with you and give the presentation that they gave before. Are those some possibilities?
It's a possibility, but I'd really like...
You trusted them to do the radio room, which is an extremely complex project.
Right, but, and I know I haven't been on the council for very long, but every other contract that we've had with a contractor, with the attorneys, with, the people that Joel works with, we've always had a couple of different companies side by side to be able to look at and make our decision based on comparing, the qualifications of different companies. And you've got the majority of the council that right now doesn't have the benefit of doing that. And I can't speak for the rest of them, but that makes me very uncomfortable.
But they
Okay.
made the...
Yep, I hear what you're saying. Mr. Tarazinski?
I, too, want to move forward and spent quite a bit of time earlier trying to get to what is our process, how are we going to resolve this to go forward. Because of the concerns about the cost aspect, it comes back to this process that we talked about, and I think the new members certainly are familiar with the choice of the attorneys, and the process, of course, as I mentioned earlier, was very similar. We had, in the attorney's situation, I forget how many books that we went through, 16, 18, some very large number of presentation materials. We got that down to 4 or 5, brought them in, and a lot of that has to do with the professional aspects of the presentation, getting comfortable with those people in the finals. Yes, the prices, at least the rates were provided, but there was no absolute numbers provided by the attorneys as, I can do the legal fees for the year for X. Our expectation is we'll watch the budget and make that happen. In this case, you're doing a one-time bid. You don't have that opportunity of, 6 months later pulling back. This is a one-time shot. So it is different to that extent, but the process is very similar. And again, it was based largely on the professional capabilities and our comfort level that we would get good service and a good product delivered by the attorneys. On the architect's side, it was done in a very similar manner. Yes, we can get the rates and the prices on a per-hour basis, but when you're looking for, which is almost effectively a bid project or a fixed price project, you know, that absolute number becomes the key, not the hour rate, because how efficient are they, how effective? If they've done 20 of these before, they can pull it off the shelf, take pieces and parts and put it together, and spend more time with the chief and his people really designing and talking through to make sure everybody understands what's going to happen and how it's best going to serve the needs. So I think there's a little bit of difference in that aspect, but the process and how it was done was the same. So to the extent that the council participated in the attorney selection, we boiled it down to 3 or 4, brought in the 2 finalists, and had them make their presentations and discussions. The full council did not visit 18 different attorneys, and I would expect they want to visit 18 attorneys, architects. We want to get it down to a narrow group, and to the extent that we can get price information, I guess that's what I'm hearing people want to see. And I hear our attorney saying that that's not generally what's been done, or that there's a process to provide that in a very realistic way. And I guess that's what the table was for, is to determine this offline, get these ideas on the table, get solutions proposed, and then get to a point where you could bring something back that would be agreeable to the council. But we're trying to fashion that here in this manner, which is more difficult to do. But I would suggest at this point that to get this thing to move forward, that if the council can agree that we look at those final 2 or 3, and to the extent that we can get cost data provided to them in I don't see that in a 2-week period, but some reasonable amount of time, that could be done in a similar manner that we handled the attorney.
Is that a motion, Tom?
Well, we got one motion on the floor.
That's an idea.
But I think it's an idea that I think people would be more comfortable
I'm kind of
with.
looking at Dean, because he's the one who said, well, we don't have a process, it's not been done before, and we're not sure that people are going to want to participate in this.
Yeah.
To the chief's point, I mean, it's
And
problematic.
We can try that and come back to you and tell you what the different firms say. And I think ultimately, if that goes forward, the best scenario, you'll have the backup information, perhaps meetings or presentations if you want that, and their cost numbers, and you're going to have to make that kind of value judgment about what do you think they're going to design and what's the cost going to be.
Well, I think in that respect, I think I would be comfortable, and that's how we chose them to begin with. They presented recent buildings they've done, the quality of the work they've provided. You call those people, you get a reference, and that's how we got, through the attorney process, and you get that comfort level that way by looking at what they've done in the past and so forth. So I think that might work. Trying to move this forward, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Sooner rather than later.
We have a couple people that haven't spoken twice yet. Ms. O'Leary.
Wait so long, I almost forget my thought.
Okay, Mr. Baker, then keep your thoughts together.
Mr. Jacobson, did you have anything else on a second? Okay.
I do, I remember now. We were saying, we're going to, about comparing apples to apples, but you only presented with us with one apple, so I don't know what else to look at. And I had went to the IML conference this summer, and I saw a lot of different architects, and I picked up the information. I think I gave a lot of the stuff to the chief, because I've seen a lot of different ones. I did not realize that we had someone already set in mind that we wanted to do this. Because I looked at different ones they showed me how they build police stations, fire stations, and things like that. And then even as, just talking with Fire Chief Bruce back there, I think we need to get a quantity building that's going to last whatever life of time the building's supposed to last. So we're not looking for someone to say, oh, we're looking for the cheap way out. I think we need to, I didn't realize this process was done, because I called myself getting involved. I went and I collected all kinds of architect information, I said, yes, we're building a police station, so what do you have? And I collected this information, and I brought it back, and I said, oh, we can look at this to find out what's going to work for us. So, hear that, I don't know, did we sign a contract with Dewberry? Because it seemed like they're the ones, we have to go with them. And I'm like, well, right now, the way the economy is, I'm sure we can send out something, and we'll get a lot of different people that will come in and just give us some kind of bid, whatever we need to feel comfortable in making a decision. But we want to make a building that, not just for today, that was going to last some time, but I can't say I just want to go with this one because they did it 3 years ago. I'm like, the whole situation has changed since then. So I would like to see something else as well. Chief?
Mr. Baker? Thank you, Monica.
Monica, I couldn't have summed it up better, but I have a suggestion on how we can go forward. One quick question. Tom, apparently you were on the committee with the final selection. How many different firms were you considering at the end? Just 2?
At the end, I think it was 2. I think there were 4 previously.
Was there anything wrong with, was Wold the second one?
I think it was.
I mean, I'm definitely familiar with Wold. They were about to build the mirror image of this building and remodel this, and
they were very familiar with
everybody was really happy with them. And when Frank came in as mayor, he had the votes lined up. He stopped them cold in their tracks. I didn't know what happened. I mean, we would have had that police station remodel that was good for 10 years, 6, 7 years ago. But
We stopped in our tracks?
yeah, in one meeting, they just said stop.
Yeah, the reason we did that was so that the high school could get built. That's why we stopped in the tracks.
And at that meeting, that was when construction costs were climbing at the rate of $50,000 a month, and your argument was very valid. But now we're at the final selection. This process of PSA Dewberry being the firm, which, by the way, this is new council. I didn't think they were the firm. I didn't know that that had already been decided for this council. It really sucks to say to these people, you got it, and then just tweak your numbers a little bit, so then they pull out some costs to be billed separately. I haven't seen any kind of negotiation or real bidding process that makes me feel comfortable. I want to see, it's really simple. We have a contract that we were about to approve. Let's just take those specs, put it out to bid, make sure the 4 companies that were in the finalists are in, anybody else that may be think they're qualified, and forget the subcommittees. Bring them all into the council and let the whole city and everybody see it. It won't take that long. And, you know, the argument will be, well, the person that goes last has the advantage. Give PSA Dewberry the last talk. The rest of them draw straws. And let's put it out there, and we'll decide on the 12th, and we're going to go forward. I wish that, God, they'd have been here tonight. We would have asked them to sharpen their pencil, and they probably would have had it tonight. But now they didn't show up, and I didn't tell them not to show up. I was here at that meeting where they were told we were going to talk about it tonight. And I'd like to know who told them not to come, because it wasn't the council. You know, this is when I have a problem with who's running the show. The people, which elect the council, or is it a staff? We're in charge, not... I'm sorry. Let's make this really simple. I'm looking for a second on a motion to put out for bid immediately, answers back in time for us to have anybody qualified to show up the 12th, make a presentation, and, you know, I agree with the comments before. Let PSA Dewberry bid against themselves, so let them sharpen the pencil. Because before this, they thought they had it no matter what. Looking for a second, please.
Can we already have a motion on the floor.
Well,
The motion is to put it out to bid with the specs that we're going to be signed for by PSA Dewberry.
No, we voted down the postpone.
Yeah, there's a motion to approve that's presently on the floor.
I'm looking.
My suggestion is that very possibly we remove the first and the second on the authorization tonight and postpone until the next meeting, and then you can amend that, or make a motion to amend to bring these back.
Could we get a clarification on what it is that you're trying to...
What I'm proposing is that we amend this contract to not be given to PSA Dewberry, but simply be put out there into the public and let bidders come forward, and not give it to PSA Dewberry tonight, but make it available to the 4 finalists or anyone else that thinks that they're qualified. Just simply put it out for bid. The final product that's in our backup.
Yeah, but we have a motion on the floor already, so...
What was that motion?
The motion was to authorize the mayor of the city of DeKalb to sign an agreement with PSA Dewberry.
Well, I'm amending it to say to sign whoever we decide on the 12th. And put it out there for
That's not
bid.
an amendment, though, is it?
I'm sure the attorney can...
Yeah, I would suggest if if that's what you're trying to do, you probably don't want to vote to approve the contract with PSA Dewberry, or even vote to approve the contract. I think you probably want to probably either vote down the pending motion or...
How do we tag in that we want to put out to bid so that we have new proposals by the 12th, including PSA Dewberry have an opportunity as well?
Yeah, I think probably the simplest way would be to direct staff to do that instead of doing it by motion. If you really want to do it by motion...
We have to have a vote to direct staff, because I don't want this confusion of any assumptions that maybe only 3 people agree with me. Sometimes when I talk and nobody says anything, I think 7 agree with me, but I want to hear from everyone.
Can we do it 2 different ways? Can we simply add an amendment on top of this motion that's out there right now, where it's either going to be approve or not approve this contract with PSA Dewberry, with an amendment that says, right, as Tom kind of pointed out to and as Dave pointed out to, that it would be a copy of this particular AIA contract being sent out with some of the specifics in the spreadsheet to say you have an opportunity until December 14th to put together some type of quote for us. You see where I'm going with this?
I don't think we can do that. I think that's in conflict. We can't vote to approve the contract with PSA and send it out for
Why don't we
bid.
just take a vote on this and vote it down if that's what...
Well, because we want to make sure we get a clear direction for the
And
staff.
then we can give direction with staff without voting on it. I mean, we're not going to vote on anything formal. I think we can give direction.
I got an idea.
Fair enough.
How about if we postpone this to the next meeting for approval, but make it clear that PSA Dewberry doesn't have the automatic win, that other contractors
Okay,
can also submit for that night, and then we can amend to pick a different one that
I'm going to
night.
call the question, I think, on
Will that
this.
work,
If you're in favor of this, signify, let's do a roll call on this. The initial motion.
This, to be clear, the pending motion is a motion to approve the contract with PSA Dewberry.
So vote in the negative votes it down.
Right.
That's correct.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Naylor.
Yes.
Baker.
No.
O'Leary.
No.
Jacobson.
No.
Tarazinski.
Yes.
Lash.
No.
Gallagher.
No.
2 aye, 5 nay.
Gee, I'm surprised.
So what is the direction?
The direction, I think, is that, from my understanding, is that this AIA document be put out, it be submitted to the 4 firms that were in the final 4. They look at the spreadsheet, they look at the facility guidelines, and they come back with a proposal as to what they believe that they can bid what they can do the architectural.
And if I can add to that, no later than the first meeting in December, because I don't want, the last thing I want is for this to be put off to where they can't get in until 2013.
Okay, so we have to get the backup to you when we think about this.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah, by the 7th, I want to say.
For the first meeting in December?
There's only one meeting.
There's only,
Well, we haven't canceled the second one yet.
while you're figuring that,
December 12th?
So we would probably require this by
December
probably
7th.
next week. So we will require this by next week of the architects.
And then
December-
is there an interest in having the architects come out and do a proposal or a presentation along with that, so you get an idea?
absolutely.
We need a
Yes.
presentation.
So we're going to ask them to provide as much detail as they can on costs and also a presentation, and we're going to take this back to the 4 firms that were part of the last selection process.
My question would be, the next part of that process is what then? So we move forward. Kristen, what do you perceive?
Why do we have
We
a
hear that night, we go through that night,
committee of the whole?
and we have was it at the committee of the whole?
Yeah, more than likely
Okay,
it
at the
would be.
committee of the whole, and we have the presentation, and then how and when do we vote on the
Is-
final product then?
Is there a way to have the presentations in committee of the whole and then decide during the regular meeting who to hire?
Boy.
Like you said, special
Well, for example,
Or can we do a special,
Special session,
a
send it
special,
out for a month. We'll all come back after the 1st of January, we'll make a decision,
Well,
and
make
then,
it the first meeting in January.
I'm saying, why don't we schedule one earlier in January that we can discuss it, have it all, and then we can put it on the agenda for the first meeting?
Let's get it done on the 12th, and why can't we get more than just those 4 firms?
Well, the concern I have, for example, is with PSA Newberry, as part of our negotiations back and forth, we would talk about a specific section of the contract and talk about the meaning of that language, and we would say, this is our concern. They would respond in writing saying, this is how we're going to address that, and we would have an understanding about what the language of the agreement meant. And if there's a dispute at a later date, we would say, this is the memo that we got from you on November 1st, where you said if this issue arises, this is what we're doing, and that would be evidence of the party's intent. If we're going to contract with a different architectural firm, I don't know that I can give you a comfort level and a professional opinion that you should feel comfortable going forward and approving a contract for several $100,000 with an architect without having any staff discussions, any negotiations, and any certainty in what the understanding is.
Motion to extend the meeting?
Yeah, thank you. I would support that.
Second.
Second by Kristen. Any discussion on extending the meeting past 9 o'clock? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I would second Dean's point. I would not want to try to, while we may make a choice or pick a first place at that particular time, in no way, shape, or form are we in a final contract authorization amendment or authorization at that point. All we're doing is picking a first choice, and that would be subject to the same rigor that you imposed on Dewberry, to the extent that the contract language has to be gone through, that it's understood, et cetera, that we do due diligence, not rush that at that particular time, just in an attempt to try and keep this on a short, fast track and now really screw it up.
What about doing the presentations on the 12th and then holding a special meeting on the 19th just to select?
I won't be here.
I think personally we need some time to digest this and let the staff and let the chief look at it and let the individuals look at it that really are impacted by this, rather than us trying to decide at in a week's time, which is the best.
Again, folks, if you want to meet with all the architects, that's going to be a couple committee of the wholes. And by the time you decide on who that's going to be, we're going to be months into 2012.
Why can't we do the same process like we did with the attorneys?
That took two
But that was, again, that was narrowed down, right? That was narrowed down to 2.
Tuesday the 13th, how's that? We'll finish it by that Tuesday.
And if you have presentations at a committee of the whole meeting, that's unfair because the last person presenting, since it's a public meeting, the last person presenting is at the greatest advantage.
I already suggested and proposed PSA Dewberry gets that spot.
Still an unfavorable advantage, I think.
Okay, draw straws. I'm tired of these meetings where you got 2 people, and then we get to here we are, and only Tom has listened to anything, and we're just like, whatever.
I'm sorry we don't have faith in each other.
No, it's not that. I mean, that was several years ago, wasn't it, Tom?
Okay, do we have the direction? I mean, I understand on how many people do we expect to have at that committee of the whole next week?
Yeah, we will. I think the direction staff is taking away is we're going to submit the information and backup we have on this project and the contract that's before you tonight to the 4 firms that were the final qualists in the last selection process. We're going to ask them to come back on December 12th at the COW meeting, make presentations, understanding that may be a long meeting, and also provide us information on cost. And I think that it would be my suggestion that at that time, we see where the comfort level of the council is and see what your direction is on a timeline for moving forward. If at the conclusion of that you say, we want to approve a contract with PSA Dewberry, we can schedule a meeting in 48 hours and you can have a special meeting and approve the contract. If you say we want to do it with someone else, staff will have some recommendations for you on the quickest turnaround that we can get to come up with something that you'll be happy with.
That sounds good. And can we limit them to 15 minutes each then? I think...
Can we put something in the motion that says that this is done by the end of January? Because I don't want to put I don't want to be in a situation where they can't get in until 2013.
You might as well take your time because You do it in January, you're going to be into 2013.
We're not going to do it in January, we're going to do it in December. Did you say 48 hours after the 12th, so we'd be also setting a meeting up for the 14th?
I said if you were doing it with PSA Dewberry, we could do it on that kind of turnaround because we've done the legwork. If it's a different firm, we'll have a recommendation for you on the 12th. And we'll have a very frank discussion with all the firms before that night and try and get a comfort level with how quickly we can turn it around.
So to take this correct, I'm the only one that wanted to open this up for additional architectural firms to bid. Is that correct? Does anybody else agree with me?
My worry is that we get them back and we don't have all the answers, whereas if we schedule them rather than Cal, we do it for Tuesday and Wednesday of that week, we can open it up and have everybody come in, and we're not pushing on a council meeting. We can get everybody in, we can get everybody who wants to bid on a presentation, and we have all the answers. We don't have to worry that the four aren't going to work out for us, and we're going to have to do this all over again and waste more time.
I second that.
And if that's the process you want to do, again, I don't want to seem like I'm obfuscating, but one of the things that's happened in the past year is that staff has spent a great deal of time with PSA, and presumably a lesser amount of time, but still a significant amount of time with Wold and the other finalists that were previously considered. And we're frankly not going to have an opportunity to do that with a wide range of people. So you're going to have different firms that are coming in with vastly disparate amounts of background and information on what the city wants. So we can ask people to come in on whatever timeline you direct, and we can send it out to as many people as you want. The wider you cast your nets, the more potential variance there is in what the responses are going to be. And that may be cost variance that you appreciate greatly. It may be variance in understanding of the project that you don't particularly like, and that may be kind of hard to evaluate on a really expedited timeline.
So are you suggesting that we throw the net out, Dave? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I mean, my worry is that we're going to come back with the four, and they're all going to be about the same price, and we're going to be in the same issue, saying, well, what else is anyone out there doing?
Well, maybe that's because that's what they are out there doing, Dave. We've gone through a vetting process. We've gone through a process to do reputable firms, and I can understand, though I don't think it's the right thing to do, going back to these four reputable firms that have been through the qualified selection process to say, what can you do?
Mayor?
Can I ask for
But I think, and if they all come back the same or within 10 or 20 or $50,000 of each other, then we know that's what the cost of doing business is. I mean, that's what I think we already have the data on, but I can respect that you don't believe it. Go ahead,
Chief, did you get a
Steve,
bag full of companies from the 7th Ward alderperson that was, how many different architectural firms do you suppose were in that bag full of companies that, have you still got that bag available?
I don't know, I'd have to look at my office.
Well, that would be the bag that needs to be given to, those are the companies that are currently advertising. A few months ago at the Illinois Municipal League, we build police stations, we'd like to talk to you. There was a lot of them at the show there.
So rebuild the whole thing.
So in other words, we are back to square one of the architectural design firm.
Excuse me.
And then we are.
Yeah.
I have the
Kristen,
right.
go ahead. Yeah, Kristen?
Steve, I feel so sorry for you in this meeting. Can you tell me, is there a motion on the floor right now?
There's a motion on the floor
Okay.
to vote up or down on this particular...
Voted down.
We already voted that down.
Okay, yes, thank you. This is no motion on the
Staff
Then what
This is just to give
Then-
staff direction.
There's no direction, no motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no motion.
Didn't
What
I
I would
second
like
Dave's
to
motion?
do is,
He did not move, he just made a suggestion.
what I would like to do is make a motion that we go on the schedule that Dave outlined. We bring in the four firms that, or the 3 or 4, whatever were the finalists. David Jacobson, sorry. Go bring in the 3 or 4 firms that were the finalists that staff has already done the legwork with. And we can do presentations on those and choose from those 4.
What were the dates on that, Kristen or Dave?
David, what were those dates?
The
13th?
Tuesday and Wednesday after council meeting.
Can we just, since we're only doing 3 or 4 firms, can we just do one day? My motion is to do one day, 13th. Special meeting on the 13th to go with these 3 or 4 firms that we've already done the legwork on, and let's hash this out. That's my motion.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's do a roll call. Do a roll call, please,
Well, I
Steve.
should like to hear discussion.
Well, we had discussion, Dave. It's time for the roll call.
He asked if there was any discussion. Nobody spoke up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Alderman Baker.
Pass.
Alderwoman O'Leary.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Tarazinski.
No.
Lash.
Yes.
Gallagher.
No.
Naylor.
No,
Baker.
Question.
it
For
fails.
clarification, I didn't vote yet. If we vote no, then what happens?
Well, then
The
someone else
pass-
puts
the
another
pass-
motion.
I am.
Prevails with the, really.
I'm not sure, I don't understand what we're voting on. I'd like clarification, please.
Direction.
This is why I wanted to have this postponed indefinitely, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I want a clarification before I vote. I don't understand.
You voted.
I did not vote yet.
You voted
I
pass.
said pass.
Pass is a no vote.
Yeah, I would have interpreted that as an abstention, which would count with the majority. There is none. There's a tie, which the mayor would have the option of voting, but not the obligation.
I think Dave's
In the past, when the pass was voted, or
I'm not.
clarified, then at the end, that person, after figuring out what's really going on...
I
with
pass
the-
on. I do not obligate it, so it's a dead tie. And so the motion fails.
Yeah, I don't think it's enough time for us to do
So
that.
does anyone else have another motion on the floor? Or other suggestions?
Yeah, I make a motion that it pushes through. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
We proceed with item K2.
Okay, if we want to go into January, can I make a motion, we do a special meeting on Tuesday, the 10th? Same motion, just change the date to Tuesday, the 10th.
Didn't we already, for clarification...
Is there a second to that? And then we can open it up for discussion?
Don't we need the staff to have, pick this day?
So he seconded, didn't, I guess it was seconded by Mr. Tarazinski.
Yeah, just,
January 10th. Okay, go
I mean,
ahead,
if I'm
Mr.
going to
Tarazinski.
debate this, I guess,
Is there,
to the,
Mr. Tarazinski spoke, so that to me is a second, isn't it, or not?
Under Capitan's rules. What is Robert's rules?
Yes, yes. So,
okay,
please.
so,
Well, so you don't, can we talk now?
No, yes.
I'm
It's not your
still
turn.
talking.
I'm about to lose it here, okay, guys? I'm really about to lose it.
Yeah, I understand. I'm with you. So if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're going to give these people adequate time to do the analysis. Their holidays and their schedules and so on are also out there. And I know we took adequate time before to do this process properly. And I don't want to shortcut it if we're going to go through this so that we are comfortable and we do it right, and the staff has adequate time to prepare, and as do the vendors. So doing it in early January is fine with me, sometime in early January. I just want to make sure that the staff has adequate time that they can hit that date. So Rudy and Mark, that we can get it turned around, that they can supply the data and it can be incorporated. There's a lot of year-end stuff you got to do yet, other work in addition to this work. So
Because of that, the timeline constraints you're talking about, and because in this rare instance we actually have a meeting scheduled for next week where the council is going to be back,
yep.
it would be my suggestion that perhaps we not
date?
approve it. We can confer as staff, we can get the city
Excellent.
manager's input, and we can have this on the agenda as an action item
Yep.
to lay out the process and approve it formally next Monday, and we'll give
Excellent.
you our best input before then.
I would make, I'm sorry, is there a motion on
Okay.
the floor?
Do you want to remove
Would you
your...
remove that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
As long as, with the, I can't think of the word, that it does get on the agenda for the next meeting.
We will have it on the agenda as an action item for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, that would be the motion I make, or can we just do that as an instruction to the staff?
There is a motion pending that has to have something happen with it.
Well, she removed her
Rescind the
motion.
Okay, and a second as well?
Yeah. So is the direction clear on that for everybody? Mr. Baker?
I'm still trying to figure out what happened. We voted down accepting PSA Dewberry and now we're just talking about how we can get maybe the four firms plus others to make a presentation, but we're not directing staff to set that up? Is that what you're
We
saying?
are directing staff to set it up and put it on the agenda for the next meeting. That's the direction.
I think the question, though, is are we asking them to go beyond the four firms, ladies and gentlemen, here?
No.
No.
With respect to that, Mr. Mayor, it would be my suggestion that that if we're going to take action on that if there's going to be head counts and we're going to come to a conclusion and have action from the council, that we put it on the agenda as an action item. And I can tell you, any one of us as staff will take it upon ourselves to make sure it's on the agenda, but we will have it on the agenda as an action item so there's no lack of clarity that the council is taking action pursuant to something that's very clearly noticed. We're going to describe it as defining this process, and we can give you our best recommendations on how that process can go forward and what the most likely timeline is.
And at that point in time, if your recommendation is it's 4 firms or 10 firms or 12 firms, someone could certainly amend that to say 1 firm or 2 firms or no firms.
And it'll give the council an opportunity to evaluate which process you're most comfortable with.
So we are postponing this to a date certain.
So that's the
Monica, you got your wish.
the motion on the floor, but
2 hours later.
Alderman Baker spoke to it and effectively seconded it, but if you wanted to add conditions that you're concerned about, you can move to amend that if
What-
there are conditions that you feel, or direction.
I'm sorry, what motion was that?
Just to add direction to that, I don't know.
And I think we're getting far enough afield of what is on the agenda that I would feel more comfortable bringing back an action item at the next meeting.
Right.
So you're not at this time going to solicit the four firms to show
No,
up?
there
on the
won't be
12th?
enough time by next meeting.
No. He's going to come back, they're going to come back with some staff recommendations after they probably have conversations with us as to what they would like to see with some options and some
In
direction.
regards to process.
So next Monday, we won't have this, like, what's going on, we're going to...
We will make a recommendation for process for next Monday's meeting.
Point
Probably with some
of order real quick. Steve says there's a motion on the floor. What's the motion? Was that...
Chair Azinski's motion per Dean's suggestion, I believe?
It was not a motion, it was a staff direction, is
Yeah.
what I understood it.
Yeah.
Not a motion, a staff direction.
So
That's the way I understood you to present it. That we would put it on the agenda, that we would do the things that Dean outlined.
So you're going to
Do
withdraw
we
that?
need to have a motion for that, or can
No,
you just...
no.
Okay.
it would be my suggestion to
In
not.
case Steve's right, do you want to withdraw that possibility?
I would withdraw any possibility of that. And substitute it as staff direction. Thank you. K2, Ron, is that what you...
No, I would like to
Oh, that was a motion, wasn't it? Ron wanted to go directly to K2, and Tom spoke.
second to it.
Tom
There was no
spoke.
second.
There was no comment that was directed at that motion. I think that one died for lack of a second.
Let's go.
But can we, does that mean we can go now? Because
We got other meetings, and I would like to, at this point in time, address your, I think, very derogatory comment about who's running the show here, Dave. I think it was very apparent here from our discussion tonight, we were not ready to have PSA Dewberry here tonight. They would have not sharpened their pencil, and I take exception to the accusations you made to our staff, who, after conversation with me, directed them to ask them not to come here tonight, because I knew that this was going to be what I think turned into a fiasco, and I think it turned into hopefully a productive one. But I think the accusations you made towards staff were very inappropriate, and I think very out of line. And it's not about who's running the show here, Dave. We are working together here. It's not about anybody's show. And I think that comment was very inappropriate.
I disagree wholeheartedly.
I
was at the meeting where we agreed to get it done tonight. There was no discussion of postponement. It came out of a different meeting where I was asked, along with Alderman Jacobson, where we thought the process was going.
Okay, the resolution
It was not discussed in the open,
11-93,
Mayor.
authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement for the provision of wholesale electricity for water wells and water treatment plants in the city of DeKalb, Illinois. Do I hear a motion to approve this resolution?
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Gallagher, seconded by Mr. Naylor. You want to fill us in on this one, please? Oh, you are, thank you.
Approval of this resolution will allow the city manager to sign a agreement for our electrical use at our wells and our treatment plants. Currently, we have had a 3-year contract with Mid-American, which will expire in December. And so we've gone out and sought out quotes, received quotes from 13 different electrical suppliers, and so we're ready to sign a contract, and so we'd just like to get that done sometime before the middle of December.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yeah, please.
How long have we been doing this? This is the second 3-year contract? Or?
This is the first, 3 years ago was the first time we actually went out for bids for electrical use, and received the lowest bid from Mid-American at that time, and actually this time Mid-American is once again the lowest bidder that we've received at a savings of $54,000 over what we're currently getting our electrical use for, so per year. So it's
a good market.
Good bargain, yeah.
I think likewise this points up to follow up on the earlier item that the City Council passed regarding the possibility of maybe probably not these rates and all that, but something similar that would be available to all citizens within the City of DeKalb in the future as be reduced rates. And, this is sort of some of the factual information that's out there.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a similar process.
Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, very good job. Any other further discussion on that? Let's do a roll call, please, since this is a contract.
Alderwoman O'Leary.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Jaruzelski.
Yes.
Lash.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Naylor.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
7-9.
Resolution passes. Okay, reports and communications. I want to share in my condolences